Despite the internet having already spoiled the catalyst for the show's narrative, something I denied until the very second it happened. Honestly, I'm still not convinced, but seeing Daredevil back in full swing is like a dream come true. It may not be as emotionally dynamic or complex as I anticipated, but a dream come true nonetheless. And I'll come right out and shout to the heavens, I liked Born Again's premiere. Hell, I loved it. And I say that because I did my usual thing, watching something that I undeniably had a great time with, started typing up my review none the wiser, and then made the mistake of opening up social media, not all of which was negative, but more than I ever expected, commenting on how terrible this was and how CW it felt, especially the supporting cast. And first off, the officer turned PI is probably the only one who gives me CW vibes, but that does not mean I instantly wanted to shut it off in disgust. Because secondly, nothing in the cinematography gave me that lower budget CW atmosphere. Some aspects of New York felt a little too clean and produced, but that never bothered me to the point of thinking it was a different New York than the one Netflix depicted. And the CW diss isn't really an insult either, because at its best, the CW is actually pretty good, but Born Again is still a clear step above that. And in this video, I wanted to highlight some of the perceived flaws in the first 2 episodes of its premiere to find out which are unfounded and which are valid. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, your nihilistic optimist, and I have to admit, I was very worried that this wouldn't be a return to form. I mean, how could it be? With the reported extensive rewrites and reshoots, which were apparent within the first minute, and divorced from that, the pure hype surrounding Born Again, that no matter how good it was going to be fighting an uphill battle to live up to. It's just hard not to get worried. Worried that all it was going to take was one aspect to fall flat and subsequently taint the entire show with the same corporate smear I see whenever bad VFX or writing rears its ugly head. Yet nothing in this gave me that sense. The desaturated colors, CG-filled character doubles, and sometimes a little too snappy editing may not be winning any awards, but none of that took me out or anything. Those slight changes from Netflix's style either went completely unnoticed or would make me go, oh cool, they're doing a spherical fisheye lens effect combined with a dolly zoom for Matt's Daredevil vision. Neat. Which, by the way, was created by doing 3 takes, all with a different camera lens, and blending them together. That, or how they played with the aspect ratio with that or the very first shot, gave me hope that we weren't just going to retread the same old ground. The cinematographers working on Daredevil are no strangers to using anamorphic lenses to distort the picture whenever we went into Matt's world, but this was arguably better, and I need more of it. Not necessarily that exact effect, though I would very much like to see it again. I just mean more contemporary techniques. Because as much as I would eat up a show that's flat out just a love letter to the Netflix days, I also want new stuff. And for those of you clamoring for longer takes in the action, with the camera pulled right back so that the stuntmen could just do their thing, well, you're in luck. There's some CG smoke and obvious stitches between the takes that I could have done without, but again, none of that took me out, as I was too distracted by the giddy excitement filling every square inch of my body. And to state it again, it wasn't as emotionally charged as I'm sure the writers were intending, but it still perfectly set the stage for what's to come. And it's at this point that I'm going to need to put up the text and give you a big spoiler warning so I can dive into the real meat of this sandwich. If you're watching this, you've definitely seen the 2-episode premiere, but you never know. Maybe you heard about its somewhat negative reception and decided to skip out. Well, don't. Please go check out what we've gotten so far from Born Again. There is a non-zero chance that the show will continue on next week and jump off of a cliff, but so far, it's well worth your time. You guys gone? All right. It's time to bring up the elephant in the room, because I can't blame anyone for turning this on and instantly feeling off when Foggy was killed, which didn't hit me on any emotional level, mainly because I immediately jumped to denial. In fact, I'm still in denial. Maybe the emotional weight of his death will hit me later on, like when I'm editing this video. Perhaps the showrunners also wanted the audience to be in shock and denial with how quickly it all happened, almost like how Mobius was pruned in season 1 of Loki. And I bring up that example because it's an incredibly sad moment that could have been more emotional if it wasn't so rushed, but was done so purposefully because it was later revealed that Mobius wasn't dead. Do I know that Foggy isn't actually dead? No. His actor has been confirmed in season 2, but that could be in flashback. However, I don't believe he's dead for a second. If I had a nickel for every time Foggy had a death fake out in the comics, I'd only have like 3 or 4 nickels, but it's still more than enough to have faith his survival was kept secret for some convoluted reason. Would that remove any sense of drama and tension if it turned out that the one character who died in the beginning to raise the stakes didn't actually die? Yeah, most definitely, but I still don't think he's dead. Linked with that controversial sequence is the line that was crossed, which everyone already speculated would be Matt killing someone, but making that Bullseye someone who we immediately knew wasn't dead because other clips of him are seen in the trailer for this, and throwing him off of a building only cheapened the impact. And it's not just that I think I would have preferred if Matt actually killed someone, because that creates a tangible reason for him to quit being Daredevil rather than the muddled mess we got, but Matt throwing Bullseye off of a building isn't even a line for him. That specific act of letting someone fall multiple stories and crippling them for life is something Daredevil's already done when he threw that guy off of a building into a dumpster. Although, seeing Bullseye pop up in a proto costume is undeniably cool. He's by no means a C-lister, but I've always stressed how life-changing it could be to add assorted C-list villains to start out a superhero narrative, just to show how vibrant the hero's life is on a daily basis. To be fair, the writing did get a little on the nose in the first minute, pushing the narrative that Foggy, Matt, and Karen were all happy and healthy in their new status quo a little too hard. Though it is something that was only there to establish that somewhat known status quo so that it can be upended and a new one could take its place. Could that have been more fleshed out? Maybe, but I appreciated how we were thrown right into the action. And something else that I thought could have been more fleshed out as well was the BB report. Right away, it came across as a forced bit of exposition, added to clearly define what kind of New York the show is depicting without any kind of subtlety. Although I did enjoy how she was an actual character later on, but I can't say I'll be looking forward to BB's weekly update. And before wrapping up with some Easter eggs and assorted notes, we gotta talk about Fisk, who became mayor much sooner than expected, fast-tracking the anticipated storyline I'd come up with in my head, possibly allowing for a much sooner Devil's Reign adaptation than I predicted, which, if you aren't aware, is a crossover storyline written in 2021 where Kingpin outlaws vigilantes and deputizes a bunch of villains to go after them. But of course, before getting to that and seeing the drastic effects this story could potentially have for the wider MCU, we get to see Fisk attempting to maneuver the political world without doing anything illegal or just smashing someone's head with a car door, which was entertaining but could have been made simpler and in my eyes more compelling if him and Vanessa were on more of a united front, because their relationship and subsequent couples counseling was somewhat intriguing but unfocused. That being said, I also don't really know where it's going. That could flip and become the most compelling aspect of the show. And I also thought it was pretty funny that the character Michael Gandolfini plays was reported wide and far as Fisk's son, Butch or Richard or whoever, yet instead he was just some random dude. Though if I had to guess, he'll be very important later, probably witnessing something he shouldn't have, and becoming a central figure in the case against Kingpin. But now, as promised, it's time for some Easter eggs and assorted notes. The first couple of which are still about Fisk, because seeing him eating a fast food, definitely not Subway for legal reasons, sub sandwich, was nice, because it's always gratifying to see one of my sandwich brethren making it to the Hollywood big time. And another note about Fisk is how he replaced Wesley. And this is no fault of the show. Obviously, Fisk would need a replacement right-hand man to smooth out his operations, but new Wesley will never be old Wesley. But then moving on to how we got the trial of the century, which I left for now because I'm assuming, more so hoping, that we get the actual trial in episode 3. And there's a good chance I overhyped this whole thing because I ranked the comic counterpart of this case extremely high in my recent video ranking Daredevil's top court cases, but I'm still just as excited to see the court scenes from this as I am to see the action scenes. And moving on to a note that is most likely nothing, but I could have sworn I heard Kirsten say something about a Rogers Depot. Did I even hear that right? Any number of people could have that last name, but it couldn't have been thrown in for nothing. And I was also intrigued by the Dirty Cops using Punisher's logo, adopting it for themselves. And I commend the show for seemingly addressing that concept. Hopefully it's covered a lot more later on and isn't just brushed aside. But for my final note, I'll give a tentative potential spoiler warning for the show, but definitive comic spoilers. So if you want to play it safe, I'd click off now. Ready? Alright. It's not like it was subtle, everyone probably got that sense, but with no research done, because I don't want to ruin the potential surprise, but it is obvious whoever Hunter Doohan is playing will be revealed as Muse. For one thing, just look at him, dude just has that serial killer look. But aside from that, I instantly recognized him from Wednesday and within seconds came to that conclusion, because who else would he be brought into play? Honestly, I'm hoping I'm wrong because I would prefer that to be a surprise, but that also doesn't 100% fit the comics because, again, minor comic spoilers, Muse's whole thing is that he wears a mask to hide his messed up face, altered from whatever mutation or inhuman gene he has, and as far as I know, doesn't have an alter ego and always wears the mask. That being said, the show can take the character in any direction they want. Should they take every character in whatever direction they want? Probably not, but I am glad the writers and showrunners aren't constraining themselves to creating one-to-one adaptations of the comics. As much as I would enjoy seeing that, because I am a fanboy down to my very bones, but it's much more compelling to see something unpredictable. And while I may not necessarily agree with the execution of how the show kicked off, or may not want to see Matt retire and then have to reignite his passion for being Daredevil for the millionth time, I am still waiting for the next episode to drop with bated breath. Are you? Or was one of the flaws I covered too much for you to take? Or is there perhaps another flaw I didn't address? Drop a comment and let me know. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.